All right, we are live. Today we're going to be discussing this, as I've titled the broadcast, Islam is not a religion. But what do I mean by that? I mean, it is a religion in some sense, but it's not a religion in the sense that we're used to. When Christians or other non-Muslims approach Islam, they think that it's basically the same thing as any other religion, that it makes some claims about the unseen spiritual world. It makes some truth claims about the nature of salvation, the nature of the afterlife, and such. And it does do those things. However, that's only a small portion of what Islam is. And when we only look at that portion, we're not really understanding Islam the way Muslims understand it. Islam is, as Muslims will often brag, a complete system of how to live your life, i.e., it seeks to dominate every aspect of your life, and that applies whether you're a Muslim or not. If you're a non-Muslim, it seeks to subjugate you. If you're a Muslim, it seeks to have your voluntary submission. So we're going to be discussing that. We're trying in a little different format today. We're limiting the broadcasts to 1 hour maximum. We'll see if this shorter, more condensed format is more conducive to the audience. And then we're going to hop over to Lloyd's channel to have a second presentation there. I'll open us with a word of prayer, and then I'll give Lloyd the chance to tell us a little bit more about what he's going to be doing on his channel. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this time together. We thank you for the technology that allows us to connect with people from all around the world, whether they are Christians, Muslims, or some other belief system. We ask that you be with us today, that you guide our discussion, and you prevent us from theological error. We pray that anyone watching take the material, consider it carefully, not just blindly believe what we have to say, but actually look into it, and not just blindly dismiss what we have to say and forget about it, but that everyone watching investigate the material, and then they see what Islam really has to offer and ask themselves whether that's something they want to be a part of. We pray that the technology works for us today and that we have no interruptions. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, welcome back to the channel, Lloyd. I already kind of gave an introduction to the subject we're going to be discussing here, but feel free to add anything to that, and then let us know, let the audience know what we're going to be doing next after we look at Islam as a political system.
Okay, yeah. So thanks for having me back. Yeah. So today, I see Thunderous is in the comments. So yeah, we will be discussing Islam as a deen, looking at a handful of references to define what a deen is and how Muslims perceive it and what the intention, what the plan is. And then we're hopping over to my channel at about 5:02. I'm supposed to have a call in from Thunderous so we can just double check everything technically because I have a knack for messing things up. And yeah, then we'll do about 45 minutes or so. Again, also not more than an hour maximum on my channel, and it went really well the other day. I peaked at 86 viewers, which is really good, And yep.
Yeah, definitely. 86 is a good number. It usually takes a couple hours to get up to that number. So if you got there in 45 minutes, that's great.
Yeah, so it's going well.
Our Kitson said Islam is like a storefront for an illegal business, Sharia. And I think that's actually a great analogy there. That, you see the face of Islam and you think that's all there is to it. And then you go behind the scenes and something completely different is going on, much like a money laundering business where they have a legitimate business as the front, but that's really only a small portion of what they're doing. That's not really important. That's kind of the way it is with Islam. And when we're only looking at the Quran and Hadith, we're kind of only looking at the storefront. We're not really looking at what's going on at the core of Islam.
I think that's a fair assessment. Hopefully we can try and clarify some of this. Also, during these talks, it allows me to clarify my thinking, to try to find better ways to express this so that it's clearer. Because I know that sometimes I don't explain it as well as I can, as succinctly as I can, or as as conceptually clear so that people absorb it. Maybe you guys can drop me a note in the comments and let me know if my work is clear and understandable, not overwhelming. Because in many cases, I do have to simplify just the sheer amount of detail that exists.
Absolutely. Yeah, we definitely read your feedback. Not all creators pay a lot of attention to the comments, but we do. We're both Lloyd and I are active in the comments. So definitely share your thoughts. Let us know what we can do to make this more useful for you, because ultimately that's what we want. We want people to, not just tune in and be entertained for an hour, but to take the material and absorb it, apply it, and start using it in their conversations with Muslims.
Right. Also, the material that I have, the slides that I have on Sharia, at some point, obviously, I'd like to finally just complete the slides and just get it done so that it's out there and it's finished. The series is finished. Once that's done, the next step is I need to go back to basically the old monotheism series, but rather than talking about necessarily the paganism of Islam, which I have to return to because there's much more material to be uncovered on the Islam's paganism, which is going to be very, very interesting for you. However, I do need to go into early Christianity in Arabia, which is a vastly misunderstood and underappreciated subject. There were huge, huge battles with heretics, with Gnostics, from the 2nd to the 5th century that were going on, and people were deeply confused as to what is Christianity, because you had partial Bibles, you had chapters of the Bible, and then the Gnostics were taking these, twisting them. So you had the book of Matthew, which was like probably in the 2nd or 3rd century in the Middle East, in Arabia, and then the Gnostics wrote like 6 or 7 variants of it, which were all corruptions of Matthew, and which one was the right one? Which was the right preacher? Who was telling the truth? There were huge fights going on at that time. I don't mean necessarily fist fights, but just theological battles, massive confusion. And another point, people say, well, there was no Bible in Arabic until the 9th century. And that may or may not be true, because there are reports, not entirely verified, but a Bible in Arabic was commissioned in the 5th century. There was one commissioned. Whether it was completed, that's a mystery, but there was one commissioned. And the guy who took the commissioning was a Syrian he was a Syrian, can't remember the sect though, but it was a heretical sect. So if an Arabic Bible was written, it was written by a heretic. so that's another series of problems. And then there actually was a full Bible in Arabia in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. There was one, a complete Bible, just not in Arabic, in Ethiopian. And the Ethiopians back then weren't entirely Orthodox either. They were slightly left of center, let's just say that. So this is what I want to get to. I have a huge amount of material on this, and I'd like to go back and then talk about Ethiopia, the links from Ethiopia and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church to Islam, Christianity in the Middle East. This is going to be fascinating. Remember, the other guys are working with the 7th century upwards, 9th century, 10th century. I've gone backwards to the 1st millennium, and there's a huge amount of historical information there that has been overlooked and ignored. So, yeah, any comment, Thaddeus, before we run on?
Excellent. Yep, just one quick question here from Pip Baxter. He says, what is a religion definition, please? And the way I'm using the term, obviously you can define it more than one way, but what I mean when I say that Islam is not a religion, I'm defining religion as a set of claims about the spiritual world, about the nature of reality, and a set of moral principles which to follow. And Islam has all those things, but it also has a lot more. So Islam includes a religion, but it's not itself a religion. It's a political system that seeks to control every aspect of life, including spiritual. So it includes a religion, which is part of it, but it's not exclusively a religion the way, say, Christianity is, where Christianity doesn't tell you how to go about forming your government. Christianity doesn't tell you what the proper laws of the nation should be. So that would be how I'm defining the difference here.
Sounds really good. No, that's really well defined. Yeah, I would not have done it as well. So yeah, should we dive into this?
Yep,
I'll do
absolutely.
one last brief word on what I just said, and then, because this is the next thing I want to get into, and someone suggested I should just do the slide deck on my own with no interruptions and just get it done. And maybe I should just do that, you know. But people seem to enjoy the conversations. So
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a possibility that Lloyd could make videos on, just going through his presentation without the feedback. Oftentimes it does go better with someone to bounce ideas off of, but it's worth a try. Lloyd has done presentations like that in the past on this channel. So, if everyone can let us know what they prefer, that'd be great. Obviously, different people have different preferences. We'll probably do a variety of things because, we can't satisfy everyone with one thing. But whatever ideas you have, please do share those.
yeah, I mean, well, the thing is, when I do 2 hours, some people love it, and then others, guys, it's too long, guys. If I do 20 minutes, it's like, oh my God, Lloyd, you should have gone on further. Why did you interrupt it? You shouldn't do these short shows. And then other guys are like, short is great. Love these sound bites. It's one of those things. But let's dive in.
Yeah, let's do that.
Someone mentioned something, but yeah, Arabia was known as Arabia Heresium Ferax, which was Arabia, the bearer of heresies. Or think of it as Arabia, the mother of heresies. So there were three main centers of heresy. Before I dive into my actual presentation, there were three main centers of heresy in Arabia, the Middle East at that time. You'd be looking at Alexandria, you'd be looking at Arabia around Najran, which is southern Arabia, close to Yemen, and also Haran, which was in Turkey. So you've got three major centers of heresy. And so Arabia was known as a center of heresy, which was creating heresies, and all of those heretics pushed out of Rome ended up in Arabia. Yeah. So the word deen, to where we're going, is often spelled D-E-W-E-N or D-I-N, right? Like you'll see, for instance, the Mujahideen, right? These are the fighters of the deen, right? The soldiers of the deen, right? And they're around today, right? The Mujahideen are around today. They were around in the 80s. They fought the Russians in Afghanistan, for instance, right? How many crusaders do we still have pillaging, slaughtering, and eating babies in the name of Christianity today, Thaddeus?
I believe that would be zero.
That would be zero for the last 800 and something years, yeah. But there is no such concept of a standing army for the deen within Christian doctrine, whereas Islam is a political and legal system, right? And so we'll do a brief discussion of what a deen is. Okay, now let's have a look. This is the Encyclopedia of Islam. Deen, plural, adyan, religion. Well, not really. The obligations which Allah imposes on man. So it's the obligations which Allah imposes on man. Notice not asks man, but imposes. It's an imposition. The domain of divine prescriptions. Now, a prescription is a law, right? This means a civil law concerning acts of worship and everything involved in it. That's a very vague, non-technical description. It leaves a lot to be desired. And Islam, of course, is the Deen al-Haq, right? Meaning the religion of truth. It is the revealed religion, the religion of the golden mean, the perfect religion. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, that's pretty humorous there. We just define Islam as the religion of truth. That's just the definition of Islam. I mean, how could you argue with us? But actually, that's an illustration of the kind of dominance that you just assert. And we see this in the comments all the time. We ask someone for evidence of their position, and they're like, it came from Allah. That's all the evidence I need. And it's like, well, no, not really. You really need some evidence. But it's very much a religion of imposition, as the definition is there. Allah said it, therefore it's right. And if you ask for evidence, you are in the wrong for asking for evidence.
Correct. Yeah, Islam and evidence don't go together very well. So, yeah, okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this book called the Kitab al-Siyar al-Sagir, right? Notice it says Muslim international law. It doesn't say Pakistani international law or American international law. It's the international law of the Muslims, as if the Ummah is a nation above all nations. Isn't that a little bit of a suspect little thing there? Isn't that a bit odd, Thaddeus? That Muslims consider themselves a nation above other nations, but they're a political entity.
Well, yeah, in Islam, there's essentially only two groups. There's the Muslims and the non-Muslims, or the House of Islam and the House of War. And that's it.
Correct.
There is no United States or Canada or Great Britain or Pakistan or Saudi Arabia. It's just Muslim and non-Muslim. That's it.
Yeah. And notice Muslim international law. So Muslims are a political entity, right? Do you know of Christian international law? How
I do not.
Christians deal with the rest of the world on a legal
Yeah, I've
basis?
never read any such text.
Neither have I. So the Kitab, the book, Al-Siyar Al-Sagir, Siyar means war. Okay. The word Siyar eventually over time became applied to Muhammad's Sirah, the biographies of Muhammad, the Gospels of Muhammad. However, literally, it means the wars of Muhammad. So the Sirah means the wars of Muhammad. So Muhammad's biography is one of warfare.
Yeah, I mean, makes perfect sense. If you're talking about the biography of Muhammad, it's essentially the same thing as a list of wars. So I can see how they
Yeah.
could become to mean the same thing.
Now, notice this was translated in Pakistan. Now, organizations and countries have prioritized certain books to be translated. These books take time and effort, so they've got to be selected. And in Pakistan, they had an initiative here, as you can see, 100 great books of Islamic civilization, right? And they've decided this was one of the 100 books that had to be prioritized, just as something like The Reliance of the Traveler was prioritized as a book that needed to be translated into English. This was one of the 100 most important books, according to the Pakistani religious authorities and the Pakistani government who funds this, to make this available in English. So I guess it might be important, yes?
Yeah, of course, it's not nearly as important as the random nobody in the comment section. We all know that they're the highest authority of Islam, but still fairly important. Being one of the top 100 books ever written.
Yeah, exactly. It's by a scholar called Shabani, right? Shabani, this guy here. So let's have a look and see how Muslim international law works out. Let's have a look, learn a little bit. So the plan for publishing in English translation 100 important books of Islamic thought, culture, and civilization was approved by the Pakistan Hijra Council. Works which laid the foundation of a new faith come knowledge-based civilization, a replacement civilization to replace your decadent Western civilization. The books that have mattered in the advancement of Islamic knowledge. When they say knowledge, they mean Islamic knowledge. The book should be the pioneering on a subject, the most advanced work of its time, or one that has had the greatest possible impact, or one that was studied widely. So they've been very careful, okay, about choosing this book. So let's have a brief look at the opening chapter, just the index, to tell us what it says. Let's see, chapter 1. This is the shorter book, so it's a summary of Muslim international law. Chapter 1, instructions of the Holy Prophet about how to conduct war. So I'm missing the part where it says, love thy neighbor. It says, okay, chapter 1, go to war. This is how you make war on your neighbors.
Yeah, you think that maybe chapter 1 would be like, here's the principles of Islam. And maybe it still is, but we see that the most important things to the author of this text is to know that you need to wage war, and here's the proper way to do that.
Correct. Notice, prohibition of a warlike operation during the sacred months has been abrogated, and the sacred months have passed. So, in one of the 100 most important books in Islam, they tell us here that, when the sacred months have passed, make war. So this prohibition has been abrogated. And then notice the army's treatment of disbelievers, dhimmis, and jizya.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing a lot here on, moral teachings. All I'm seeing is how to wage war, how to treat unbelievers, how to take their property.
yep,
Oh, and then chapter 5, how to make peace, which of course is how to subjugate them. These are the core elements of
yeah,
Deen according to this work.
yeah. So they speak here the territory of war, the Dar al-Harb. So look, this goes on and it talks about warfare. Understand? So just so we know, This is a discussion. So the whole purpose of the deen, according to this, is warfare. The whole discussion around deen is warfare. So let's have a quick, I'm going to go through about 10 slides or so to look at some of these. Now, Sharia is a clearly defined way, right? Muhammad is the lawgiver, but in the Sharia, so is Allah. They're both the lawgiver. In fact, they have equal authority. Muhammad has the same authority as Allah as far as the Sharia is concerned, which would be shirk. They have equal authority. So characteristically, the lawgiver is Muhammad in his function as a model, an exemplar. In other words, the perfect example, an exemplar, perfect example. The Sharia, now Shari, for instance, the word jihad has general meanings, right? Colloquial meanings like struggle, but it also has a Shari meaning, right? In other words, a meaning under the Sharia, a legal meaning, right? Which is warfare on non-Muslims to impose Islam, right? A prophetic religion in its totality. Within Muslim discourse, there's rules and regulations governing the lives of Muslims. Otherwise, Islamic jurisprudence, which is law, civil law. So rules and regulations, that again is law. Governing the lives, governing would be political. So the emphasis here is politics and civil law. Right? Now there's two purposes of the law. There are broad aspects of regulation. There's duty to Allah, and it's the law. You have to. For instance, if you lived in the land of controlled by ISIS and you didn't pray 5 times a day, they killed you. Because that is the law. That is in the Sharia. I've showed this before on the channel. There's a chapter in the there's a passage, there's a law in the Reliance of the Traveler that says if a Muslim forgets to pray, he is to be killed. Right? He's still buried in the Muslim cemetery, but he has committed a crime, he must be killed on the spot. So ibadat, the 5 pillars of Islam, the profession of faith, the prayer, fasting, zakat, pilgrimage. Let's have a look. Generally, this is dealt with first in the books of law. Right? These 5 basic duties which lay Muslims must follow. But notice, laws governing human relations fall under transactional law, such as marriage, divorce, and commerce. They're all effectively the same thing. Technically, they fall under commerce, which is transactional. Mm-hmm. I pay for something, you give me something. So things like marriage and divorce are considered transactional. They fall under commerce. They fall under the framework of a commercial transaction. Ibadat is submissive obedience to a master. These are the things which a Muslim does, which bring the creature into contact with his creator. Now, these are, again, Jesus spoke to the Pharisees and said that they've destroyed the purpose of the law. They've created these hidebound rules, right? Now, these imams that have written the Sharia, technically they are the Pharisees of Islam, right? And submissive does not have a positive meaning. It's an adjective meaning, allowing yourself, willing to be controlled. You're inclined or ready to submit. So you are willing to be controlled. You're willing to be told what to do. You're ready to submit. You do not use your own thinking. You don't push your own will. You submit to their will or yield to the authority of another. You are unresistingly obedient. Your thoughts, that is.
Yeah, and in Islam, everyone submits. You submit voluntarily because you're a Muslim, or you submit involuntarily because you're a subjugated people who's been conquered by the Muslims.
Yeah. Yeah. So they want your submission, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim. Now, I've covered this before. I do know that I need to repeat these things often. People do forget. But Islam is a deen. It is a socio-political system. It is not a religion, even in its own sources. So deen embodies perspectives on existence, life, society, and it's a socio-political system. It is a complete and competing ideology. It competes with Western systems of law, morals, ethics, and so on. Right? I mean, for instance, when a society becomes Islamic, it dresses like Arabs. It grows beards. It starts to use Islamic names. In fact, it is Arab supremacism. You're just imposing Arab culture on the world. Yes, that is.
Yeah, definitely. If this was really the religion for all people, then why is everyone who is a convert to Islam taking a Arab name? Why is everyone who's a convert to Islam trying to dress like they live in the desert? Why is everyone bowing down and praying towards a specific place on earth, which just happens to be in the middle of the Arabian desert? Very interesting stuff. Now, if we reconsider and say that this is a system about establishing the political dominance of Arabs, well, then it all makes perfect sense.
Yeah, you know what? You just made me realize I need to do something. Drop this across here. Uh, you guys may or may not have seen this, but yeah. So Islam does not worship a stone. Muslims don't bow and pray and worship and praise a piece of stone. It's not paganism. The pagans did that. Muslims don't worship stone. They would never actually lick a stone. They would never pray to a black rock. They would never adore a black rock. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, I mean, clearly we can see that this is pure monotheism with
Yes.
no aspects of a paganism whatsoever.
Yeah, when they speak of Islam as an oral tradition, well, I suspect this is what they were talking about right here. You know, so yeah, so
Yet Thunder said something along the same lines. He said, that's oral idolatry.
yeah, yeah.
The little
So
pun there.
understand this is just paganism. This is exactly what the pagans did. No difference. So the deen is a political framework for managing mankind's affairs. Now, deen has four linguistic meanings. There are two famous classical Arabic dictionaries, the Al-Qamus al-Muhit, which is the basis for Lane's lexicon, which is in use today in universities all over the world. It's a well-known standard reference. And the Lisan al-Arab, it's 20 volumes. It is the largest and the oldest of the Arabic dictionaries. And they both state there are four meanings of deen. Those meanings are subjugation and dominance, which includes ownership, which is law, and possession is 9/10 of the law, government, administrative or legislative authority. So this is again politics. This is how to govern a state, how to govern people. Then obedience and bondage. Right? If you're not obedient, then you must be placed in bondage. Dhimis, jizya. Subordination and dominance under the power of others, which is very nicely stated, except that they mean under the power of the Muslims. The original article that I used for this, I still have a copy, was taken down after I did a show discussing it. The guy deleted it. Fortunately, I have a copy. And also someone else made a similar article, which is still online. So, yeah. Rules and regulations, doctrine, ideology, tradition, notice all religion.
Or,
Right? And finally, reward and repayment. So we're talking rules and regulations. This is what the Pharisees were accused of doing wrong.
yeah, I mean, this sounds exactly like the Pharisees, that it's all about rules and regulations, fine points of the law, doing what the letter of the law. There's no aspect of moral principles that guide you. Our Kitsune did make a correction here. He said, we don't pray to the rock, we pray for the rock. Thank you for the super chat.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. It's very, very important. We just get back to where I was. Yeah. So, yeah, let's have a look further then. So, now the first meaning of deen, according to these two dictionaries, is subjugation or dominance. Now, to subjugate is not a positive term. It's basically to enslave. To subjugate is to enslave, to control someone so that they have no power, to take away their power. So this is where they are attempting to force the control over you. It is administrative or legislative authority, but notice it is totalitarian authority. It is to put pressure to be obedient, using power to enslave or make one obedient. This I got from an Islamic article on the topic. In Arabic, Tantuhum Fadanu means I subjugated them so they obeyed me. So it's not willful obedience. It is forced obedience with the means of threats. It means I ruled or governed upon him. So that is political inaction. The word is used to indicate a person who dominates and rules over a state, over a nation. Again, it's political. It is not a personal relationship with your creator. It's not a personal relationship in a religious sense. This is political control in a totalitarian political state. Now, your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about a political state. And the Muslim who wrote this, no doubt, was in a sense bragging. He's like, we control you, we control everything. And then maybe they had some second thoughts and took the article down. But that's what he was essentially saying, is that Islam has control over you. And the average Muslim won't put it in those terms, but they will say that they submit, which is the same thing as saying that someone has control over you.
Right. Right. They're boasting about how powerful they are. Now, the second meaning is obedience and bondage, subordination and domination by someone, and bearing humiliation under subjugation and power of others. So when they say power of others, they mean the power of the Muslims. And this would be the dhimmis who are humiliated under subjugation, under the power of the Muslims. So be very clear here. This is a little bit of euphemistic language here. And he says here, al-din does not mean religion. It means obedience. So
yeah, it goes right back to what I said in the introduction, that it may include what we call religion, but it's not really about religion. It's about subjugation. It's about control.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll do a couple of different slides. And remember, in that list that we have here, religion is only 10th on the list, and it's optional. It's an optional extra. You have ownership, government, administrative and legislative authority, subordination, dominance, doctrine, ideology, tradition. Tradition, well, traditions of men. Right? The Sharia was written by men. It was written by men in the 9th and 10th and 11th and 12th and 13th and 14th and 15th centuries. So, yeah, there's that. And this tradition, the ijma, this even overrules the Quran. Right? As I've said before, if you ask a Muslim, show me the Shahada in the Quran. Because you say you only follow the Quran. So show me the full Shahada in the Quran. It's not there. Because these traditions overrule the Quran. Show me the 5 daily prayers in the Quran. Not there. These traditions overrule even the Quran. So tradition is more powerful. It overrules, it abrogates even the Quran.
Yeah, none of the 5 pillars are explicitly stated in the Quran, nor the concept of there being 5 pillars. You get vague ideas like you should pray. The Quran seems to say you should pray 3 times a day, which is 3 is not equal to 5, and last time I checked. Or it might say that you should give charity, but it doesn't have the specifics of the 5 pillars. They're not there. Someone created those later on. Muslims will, of course, say they come from Muhammad, but either way, unless you're claiming that Muhammad is divine, you're following the teachings of a human being above the supposed literal words of your supposed God.
Yeah, correct. And just briefly, this is stolen and I would say perverted from the Jewish origins. Okay, Deen means law in Hebrew. Now, I'm sure you can find 5 or 6 different meanings, but for our purposes, the word Deen means law in Hebrew. Islam is the Deen ul Haq, the religion of truth, as we say it, but it is the system of truth, right? The legal system of truth, right? Conversely, Christianity and Judaism are therefore termed by the Muslims Deen al-Batil, the false religions, the void, worthless religions, and also the religions of Satan, because Batil is a name of Satan. And the word Deen is the same word as the Jewish Hok, or statutes. So this word Hak is taken from the Jewish word Hok.
Interesting.
All right, I'm going to briefly talk about this. I'm not going to jump onto this slide very much. Okay, I've done this plenty of times. I did it last week on my channel with Thunderous. So understand, though, that lay Muslims are sitting at the lowest level of Islam, called the Zahir. They call it the Ibara level. So they learn what is called the Zahir, the outer, the literal meaning of Islam, and what the scholars call Islam for the masses. So the lowest level of Islam, as the scholars term it, is, and this is the same scholar, Kushairi. Sorry, there's a scholar called Kushairi. You'd have to look up a scholar called Kushairi. This is the guy that defined this whole system that they were using. Sorry, just move it back. Kushairi, this dude here. So Kushairi defined these terms. He finally made these like, this is how it works. And Islam for the masses. A lay Muslim follows Islam for the masses. They are legislative subjects. Above them are the legislative practitioners. the imams, and above the imams are two more groups, and they have a different understanding of the Quran and Hadith. They also have access to different sources, which being the Sharia. So the lay Muslim is at a very, very low level of understanding. As I said, he learns Islam for the masses, like communism for the masses. That's what they are. They are the proletariat?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the term.
Yeah. Pip Backstoss, who came up with all this stuff. So it's a series of scholars starting in the mid-9th century through to about the early 12th century, up to just the beginning of the 1100s, where most of this coalesced, and then little bits were changed and added, and certain conflicts arose, and they had to kind of refine all this up until about the 15th century, 1500s, somewhere around there. But there were huge battles going on in Islam, and they had to define a system that everyone could coalesce around, a common set of rules and principles that they could build this growing empire on. Actually, if you go read up on courses on Sharia, they'll say the Sharia is the one thing that Muslims coalesce around. Basically, it's the common set of principles that Islam coalesces around.
Yeah, and real quick
Yep.
before you go on, someone might say, well, there's different levels of knowledge in Christianity or any other thing, and the difference here is that this is intentional and explicit. That it's intentional that the average Muslim not know very much about Islam. You might say that the average Christian doesn't have a great understanding of Christianity, but that's not intentional. It's just that the person hasn't had the interest to go to a deeper level. And it's not like knowledge is purposely being withheld, or even in many cases, intentionally false knowledge is being distributed to hide the understanding of the higher level scholar.
Right. Yeah. No. Actually that's something worth discussing or doing a bit more work on to actually talk about further. I'm not going to go through this in depth. I'm just going to briefly touch on this. But at the bottom here, right, they're speaking of Ismaili theology. This is not purely strictly Ismaili. It's especially true in the Shia. The Sunnis do it, but it's a lot more reserved. Let's say they don't make it as obvious. The Shia make it much more obvious. But notice the Islamic theology. Trust me, this is Sunni Shia the works. It's all there. Ismaili theology was revelationary in character. The Haqqaiq, right, transcended human reason and ultimately derived from Gnostic doctrines. This is from another scholar I'll show you now in a moment. Considering the principles of spiritual and physical worlds in Neoplatonic terms. So the Sharia is Neoplatonic in one sense, because when the Muslims had this growing empire and they needed a set of common rules, because they needed rules for a caliphate. How do you run a caliphate? How do you run a perfect caliphate? Because Islam is perfect, therefore the caliphate is perfect. Therefore their laws are perfect. And there was a scholar called Al-Farabi. And Al-Farabi did some reading, and he found a guy called Plato. And he found a book written by Plato called The Republic. And he then defined the rules for the caliphate by reading the Republic and saying, okay, I'm going to change all this, and here we go, caliphate, Bob's your uncle. Okay, here we have the perfect caliphate. Except he read it through the lens of the Neoplatonists who hated Christianity. But that's a story I'll come to later. Okay. Now the Gnostics. Okay, we know that the Gnostics have this incredibly interesting view of Jesus. Now, of course, these Gnostic notions of Jesus wasn't real, Jesus was a phantom, Jesus never died on the cross, all of that passed into Islam. If you read through the various Islamic scholars of the day on the story of the crucifixion and the resurrection, you will find that they almost verbatim copy Gnostic terms. I've got about 7 or 8 different versions of it, where these Islamic scholars cannot agree as to what happened, but all of these stories are derived from Gnostic versions of the crucifixion and resurrection. This is by Edward Berman, The Assassins, the Holy Killers of Islam. He's speaking of Shia Islam here. But have a look here. They speak of ta'wil, allegorical interpretation. So in that list, you had the literal, then you have these different levels of interpretation. Now, the proselyte is taught that a prophet is known not by miracles, very conveniently, but his ability to construct and impose a kind of system that is political, social, religious, and philosophical. See, and therefore, now, by implication, Christianity is therefore incomplete. It is unfinished. It is inferior. It is not a deen, because it doesn't combine politics, social control and behavior, religion, and philosophy. And when they say political, legal as well. So Christianity would therefore be inferior.
Yeah,
Your
you got
thoughts,
right there.
Thaddeus?
You got an explicit statement that Islam is a system of four things: political, social, religious, and philosophical, i.e., that it's not just religion. Daduza dudes asked if this covers both Shia and Sunni, and I think
Dude, they're
that,
all Muslims. At the end of the day, they're just all Muslims. Don't worry about it too much.
yeah, I was going to say, I think that what you're showing is that it's a difference of details, perhaps, but not a difference of the fundamental beliefs. That they both believe that it's a system of political domination. They both want to control others. They might both say that the other person is doing it wrong, but they have the same goals in mind.
Oh, Nasar Khan wants me to come and debate Hamza Deen. Why? Is he going to say that the scholars are all wrong, that the Sharia is wrong, that the Mujtahids Mutlaq are wrong, that the all of the scholars who wrote all of the fiqh is wrong, that everything that the hadiths are wrong, that the scholars of Al-Azhar are wrong, but Islam is correct.
Yeah, Nazar, while you're here, and you might just be another Alonzo alias for all I know, but while you're here, can you tell us why Hamza cuts off any Christian who shows any knowledge? Why he's afraid to debate people who actually have some knowledge, and that most Muslims have even figured this out and stopped watching his lame channel? Do let us know.
Yeah. No, because all they're going to say is, well, the random anonymous trolls in the comments are the great scholars of Islam, and they always say, "Have you consulted a scholar?" Well, these are your scholars, but of course the scholars are wrong, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing here. We're consulting scholars. Is Hamza a scholar? I don't think he is. So you're telling us to go to a lower authority than these actual scholars of Islam. Very interesting.
Right. Here's a scholar of Islam, a man called Ibn Khaldun. He is the founder. He is considered the most important historian in Islam. Right. He's the greatest historian in the history of Islam. He's the founder of sociology, which is basically the study of history and the development of society. And he is incredibly famous. He's also a fully qualified, fully trained imam. So he was a highly, highly educated religious scholar as well as a man of science, I suppose. Now, we want to look at Quran 6:1-8. Allah being the forceful subjugator. Then I'll wind down at this point. So Quran 6:18, he is the subjugator over his servants. That's what the Quran tells us. But Ibn Khaldun writes it a little differently. Allah exercises forceful domination over his servants. Right? This is in the Muqaddimah, the book called the Muqaddimah. Now, okay, that's this title here, the Muqaddimah. Now, what is there to debate? I mean, are you going to say, well, what are we debating? Because why don't Muslims want to talk about the Sharia, besides the fact that it is illegal for Muslims to talk about the Sharia, correct? Now, what's this guy's name? Nasar Khan. You know, it's illegal for Muslims to talk about the Sharia. I'm still waiting for a Muslim to come and actually read the Sharia and just discuss it. We actually read it, actually read the books and then talk about the laws, right? So, yeah, that'll be nice if that ever happens.
Yeah, Nasser, stop hiding behind a false authority. We're going to the real authorities here. We're going to the most respected Muslim scholars of all time and reading their words to you. And you're telling us to go to some random clown and go to a channel where he controls debate and he can shut off anyone at any time when he doesn't want to talk about something. This is your version of intellectual honesty? Grow up, man.
Yeah. Now explain to me why your scholars are wrong. Please explain to me why the Sharia is wrong. Do explain to me why the scholars who wrote the Sharia, the Mujtahids Mutlaq, the four Imams, are wrong. I'd like to know why we should believe you and not the greatest scholars of Islam who wrote the most respected Islamic law texts. That will be very, very interesting. Now, let's have a look at what Ibn Khaldun said here. It should be known. Now, this is after the Crusades, right? This is after the Crusades, which is supposed to be the worst things that ever happened to the Muslims because the Christians just attacked them out of the blue, right? Now, it should be known that after the removal of its prophet, a religious group must have someone to take care of it, that to be the scholars, to cause the people to act according to the religious laws, to force them. He urges the obligations imposed upon them, and the human species must have a person who will cause them to act in accordance with what is good for them. The scholars know what is good for you, and who will prevent them by force from doing things harmful to them. In other words, from not following the Sharia. The scholars must use force to prevent you from, not following the Sharia, to make you follow the Sharia. Such a person is the one who is called ruler. In the Muslim community, the holy war is a religious duty. The Quran is a book, Nasser. The Quran's a book too. You know that, right? And it was written by a bunch of scholars because when Muhammad died, a goat ate a chapter. And for 20 years, it was under who? Hafsa's bed for 20 years. And then, of course, you only go through Quran. Well, your scholars spend 7 years at seminary and legal school to do what exactly? Well, what do they read? What exactly are they doing?
It takes like a couple days maybe to read through the Quran. I guess they're just doing that two to three times a week for 7 years,
Yeah,
just
exactly.
reading through the Quran.
Yeah, maybe you can show me in the Quran how to do the Hajj. Show me how to do the Hajj, how to perform the Hajj, or how to do the prayer, or how to do ablution. Show me in the Quran where that is. The 5 daily prayers in the Quran. Give me that in the comments, as well as the full Shahada. Okay? And also, what do Qadis do? You know, Islamic judges, the guys who do fatwa, what books do they use? Because are you telling me these guys waste their time in seminary for years and years? What are they reading? What are they learning? What books are they doing? Also, Islam's a legal system, correct? Doesn't it have a law book? Doesn't it replace Western law? Don't you say Western law is decadent? You want Islamic laws? So don't you have laws for commerce, sales, marriage, slavery? Where are those things in the Quran? It's not in the Quran. So thanks. Now, in the Muslim community, the holy war is a religious duty because of the universalism of the Muslim mission and the obligation to convert everybody to Islam by persuasion or by force. Therefore, caliphate and royal authority are united in Islam so that the person in charge can devote the available strength to both of them. Right? The other religious groups did not have a universal mission, and the holy war was not a religious duty to them, save only for the purposes of defense. The person in charge of religious affairs in other religious groups is not concerned with power politics at all. By this, he's saying that Muslims, the caliphate, is concerned with power politics. Royal authority comes to those who have it by accident and in some way that has nothing to do with religion, not because they are under obligation to gain power over other nations, as is the case with Islam. Islam is under obligation to gain power over other nations. They are merely required to establish their religion among their own people. Your thoughts, that is.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this scholar here has no authority compared to the great Nasser in the chat here, and of course can't even hold a candle to Hamza and his selected conversation with people who know nothing. But he does seem to be supporting exactly what we're saying. He does seem to say that Islam is a religion or a system of force, that persuasion by force. Yeah, great stuff there.
Yeah. Since I wonder, should I? Yeah, you know what? I could talk more about this, but I mean, hopefully this has provided sufficient overview. Do you think there's anything else that I need to add here? But this really gives us an idea of Islam as a deen from within the Sharia and a couple of supporting texts. I mean,
Yeah, I
obviously we
think
can do lots. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, Yaakov has a good summary here. 99% of what Muslims do in daily life is not found in the Quran, but in the Hadith and the Sharia law. So it's probably like 1% the Quran, I don't know, 20% Hadith, and then the rest, the opinion of scholars, the opinion of the Sharia law. And the average Muslim probably doesn't know this. You know, Nasser is probably ignorant. He probably has no clue that what his scholars are teaching him is not found in the Quran, because he probably, like most Muslims, doesn't speak Arabic, just recites words he doesn't understand, and just has to blindly follow Hamza or some other person and what they're teaching him. And what he's not realizing is that what he's being taught doesn't come from the Quran. He might believe it does, but it kind of defies common sense if you bother to think. You know, the Quran's not actually that long. It's about equivalent length of the four Gospels. And they tell us that it has everything necessary for life, all these fine details to tell you everything about everything. Obviously, that information is coming from somewhere else. And what will happen is they'll take a Quran verse that's, 8, 10 words, something like that, and then they'll write 50 pages of material and they'll pretend that they're explaining that verse, but really they're giving their opinion on how you need to
Hmm.
live your life.
So he says Hajj and wudu is in the hadith. So, show me the five daily prayers. Show me what that is. Show me how to do the Hajj. Show me the detail. Give us the actual description of how to do it. So have a look here, for instance. Have a look here. This is the index of the Reliance of the Traveler. This is the world's most popular, its most famous Islamic legal manual. And this is probably on your neighbor's bookshelf, right? Notice they have here purification. There's 50 pages on purification. Then let's have a look at prayer, section F. There's 120 pages on prayer. Then there's 24 pages on the funeral prayer. Zakat, 33 pages. Let's go to fasting, 20 pages on fasting. The pilgrimage, now we're looking at 74 pages on pilgrimage. Okay. Can you show me, Nasser, the 74 pages on the Hajj in the Quran? No, you
Yeah,
can't. Sorry, did you say no? No, did I hear you correctly? You can't? No, it's not there, right?
the Quran doesn't even. I think probably the Hajj is the close to the five pillars that the Quran says, but it doesn't say anything about it being obligatory. It doesn't say anything about if a Muslim is financially able, they should do it. It doesn't say about once in your lifetime. It doesn't say any of that. All it says is that there is a pilgrimage. That's all the Quran tells you. And then you
Yeah.
got the Sharia here with 74 pages, I believe you said, explaining all the fine details of the Quran. You're telling me all 74 of those pages are derived from those one or two sentences in the Quran? Come on,
Yeah.
think,
Let's have
man.
a look at the Hajj. Let's have a look at the pilgrimage, the Hajj. So, if you, Nasser, can direct me to the page in the Quran where I can get all of this information, who must perform the Hajj and the Umrah? Special vocabulary, Hajj and Umrah, obligatory once in a lifetime. Who's obligated? Right? Remember, Muslims always say consult a scholar. Well, now I'm consulting a scholar, and now you're saying it's the wrong scholars, or the scholars are wrong. It's one of those. It's always one of those. We have the wrong scholars, or the scholars are wrong. Ability to perform Hajj in person. Let's have a look. That's an entire page so far, just for the index. Let's have a look. Oh my golly, another page just, oh, touching or kissing the Kaaba. Oh my, looks like that's very Islamic. Didn't the pagans do that? The pagans kissed the Kaaba. That's 2 pages just for the index. Let's have a look. Oh my golly, we have 3 pages of laws just for the index. Oh my golly, 4 pages of laws just for the index. And let me go back to your thoughts, Thaddeus.
Yeah, I mean, clearly this book is just doing nothing but quoting the Quran. That's all it's doing. I don't know why you think otherwise, Lloyd. I mean, clearly.
Yeah, exactly. I have no idea. And also, do me a favor. Uh, Nasser, if you can just explain to me, the pagans used to kiss and lick a stone idol. This guy's praying to a black stone. That's what pagans did. This guy's licking it. These people are worshiping it, adoring it. This is pagan. Did you have an explanation for this? Are these not real Muslims? I'd just love to hear your thoughts on this, Nasser. It would be great to know, because this looks like, oh man, if you zoom into, oopsie, pardon me, yeah, that just looks a little gross, right? That's a tad gross. Okay, I'm closing that. So understand, if you everything you ever wanted to know about Islam is in the Sharia, all of the details specifically and explicitly, and you can see the level of detail here. This is the Sharia. So yeah, so this is me. We should wrap up, and I need to do
Yep,
the show on
yep.
my channel. We're all going to jump over to my channel with Thunderous.
Yep, just so everyone knows, not everyone's here at the start. We're doing a shorter format today, trying to make it more digestible. But if you haven't had enough, no worries. We're continuing. We're hopping over to Lloyd's channel. Give us a couple minutes to set up. Once we end here, it should pop up, say, the audience is about to transfer to this following stream. Do you want to go there? And then if you don't answer yes or no, it'll eventually take you over there. So we'll see you all over there in a few minutes. Thank you for joining today. The audience kept building and building. We got into the 90s, which is very unusual for the
Wow,
first hour. It
that's
usually
great.
takes well into the second hour to get above that number. So I think that's some implicit feedback that people like this format. They like us getting directly to the point and keeping it focused on just one small subject at a time. So we'll give this a couple more tries, see what the feedback is. Let us know what you think of this format in the comments later, and we'll see you over on Lloyd's channel in a few minutes.
Hey,
God
Jimmy
bless.
English, nice to see you. And yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks, Thaddeus. We'll see you guys in a few minutes.